Welcome everybody to Indivisible Text Ledge Live. It is Saturday, March 13th, 2021, and we are excited to be with you today to pass along some key stories, some key actions that have been happening throughout the 87th Texas Legislature these past 2 weeks. Thrilled to be joined by Jason Sugg, our Twitter Commander-in-Chief. Jason, happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday, Alex.
All right, well, we got a lot of things that we want to share. So there's the links all listed in our post. Whether you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, you can check those out and share them, comment on them. But let's go ahead and jump into them, Jason.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here so everybody can see what is going on. So it's been a really eventful week. We were talking before about just everything that's been going on in Texas this week. And so we're going to, like Alex said, just kind of fly through these. We want to make sure everybody realized that as of Monday, all Texans over 50 will be eligible for the COVID vaccine. So that's a shift now. And if you're in that category, get out there and get that vaccine. This week, saw a lot of COVID news, and we're going to really be talking about the way that so much of this is a distraction from everything else that's been going on in Abbott's administration right now. But of course, Abbott lifted the mask mandate statewide, apparently without actually consulting his medical advisory board, or at least not 3 out of 4 of them. So you have to wonder what was really driving this move, which seems pretty clearly political, right? I mean, he was stewing and questions related to the storm and the failures of Texas's power grid, and then this move comes along, and really a shockingly calculated way. It seems like to me that I mean, people are going to die because of this.
Yeah, it's so disappointing and frustrating because we've been going through this over a year. We're going to highlight some more impacts of COVID here in a second, but it's been a year of people trying to get through this, and people have been able, the Texans have been able to survive, have endured this for a year. Why are we going to make more risks to Texans, increase risks to Texans when we're almost past a huge point in this? The vaccine, like you said, is out there. Texans 50 and older can get the vaccine. There's also, availability into a lot more groups of people that are available. So go out there and get your vaccine. But, that's still going to take time to implement all of that. And we still have a lot of Texans who aren't going to want to have the vaccine, unfortunately. And so that's where this virus can still be spread quite a bit to the population in Texas. And this decision to remove masks, like I said, completely political, frustrating, because we've been through this for a year and we are getting so close to getting to a turning point, and this is going to just delay that.
Yeah, we're almost to the finish line. And we should mention that not only is this at odds with Abbott's panel of medical advisors, it's also at odds with the CDC's recommendations. So once again, Texas ignoring the experts and striking out on its own in a politically motivated turn here. I thought this was highlighted pretty well by the Lone Star Project, who, there's going to be lives lost, but and that's obviously the biggest tragedy. But there are smaller tragedies here too that we're just putting small businesses in Texas in a really precarious position. How do they're supposed to enforce the bans, the mask mandates if they want them, but they're going to lose customers either way, is what I keep hearing from small businesses. And it puts these frontline workers, often the least paid of our Texas workers, in charge of being the ones to enforce this thing. And it's really, this to me makes it so clear what an abdication of responsibility this is on the part of the governor.
Yeah, failed leadership says it exactly what it is. This is failed leadership. Leaders do matter. Leaders making decisions that help the rest of us matters. And Abbott is essentially saying, I don't want any part in this decision. Y'all deal with it times a million in every restaurant, in every store, in every community, and fight those fights because, he has zero interest in actually being a leader for Texas.
Yep, absolutely. Um, and of course, he lifted the mask mandate, and Austin and Travis County said that they were going to continue it, and indicted Attorney General Ken Paxton, who has his own troubles he needs to distract from, immediately decided to spend taxpayer money suing those municipalities for wanting to comply with federal CDC guidelines around around this issue. Um, and
And it's so obvious how much they're coordinating this effort. You
yeah,
know, Abbott lists the mask mandate. Cities and local communities say, well, we're going to keep things in force. And here comes Ken Paxton to say, oh, well, if you're going to try to do something to protect Texans, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you because mask mandates are now ending. The governor has ended it, and he's the bulldog who's going to make sure that whatever the governor is trying to pursue is followed through in the legal courts and everything.
yeah, and we see here why Abbott protects Paxton, even though he's so crooked, right? He needs somebody to do his dirty work for him, and here he's got Ken Paxton. And just to highlight how dirty Ken Paxton is, not only has he been indicted for years by the FBI, there's new allegations coming out again that about him helping other donors out, hiring, this nepotistic hire of like hiring relatives of donors, basically, as a way to,
Yeah, classic pay to play.
Oh, exactly.
Donate to me, I'll scratch your back and everything like that. And just the corruption that Paxton participates in so publicly now, it's like he's not even trying to hide it.
Yeah.
It's just he feels like he's untouchable. And we need to make sure that we continue to call for his resignation, but also make sure that he is not the attorney general come 2022. We can vote him out, and Texans need to be ready to do that.
Yep. Yep. And of course, he filed this lawsuit this week, and a judge rejected it, at least for 2 weeks. But we got to say, every 2 weeks that it gets rejected is more people who don't die, who get a chance to get the vaccine before the mask mandate gets lifted, whatnot. So this was a real success for Austin and Travis County, and a real defeat for Ken Paxton. And again, highlights the waste of taxpayer money that's going on here. I mean, the state has budget problems, and yet this is what our attorney general is opting to spend money on. So I highly recommend giving him a call this week and telling him to back off of this. Stop wasting taxpayer money here.
Yeah. And when you have situations like this, the waste is twofold. You have our state dollars being wasted because the attorney general is using his resources to file this lawsuit and pursue everything. But then you have city councils and counties having to waste funds to defend their right to be able to have this mask mandate to protect Texans. And so we're losing money on both sides of this equation because of the just corrupt role that Ken Paxton wants to have in Texas. And so this is our money truly just being thrown away, burned, whatever metaphor you want to use. And it's unfortunate when we have leaders like this in our state.
Absolutely. So in the spirit of Indivisible Text Ledge, we have a call to action around this. We're asking people to keep calling the governor and ask that he reinstate the mask mandate. Which we still need. I mean, we're getting near the finish line here, but we're not there yet, and we need this still. So you can find this on our Twitter account. You can find it on our website. We've got phone numbers for you. We've got scripts. We've got background on information on this action. Check it out and take a moment to call. And we should mention too that every Tuesday now we have a online get together to help people walk through taking action for the first time. If you haven't had the experience before doing this, then you can join us there. And again, there's information on our website about this, and be with other people who are also in the same spirit of taking action.
Absolutely. We have the event on our Facebook page, so you can indicate you're going, that you're interested. There's a link to register for the Zoom event where we bring everybody into a space to ask questions, to be able to complete these tasks. And this is the most critical part of what we can do in Texas is we have to take action. We're sharing these stories, making sure you're informed. We continue to have things where we're educating Texans on the process in the state legislature, but it all comes down to us taking action. And so when you see these action alerts on Twitter or Facebook, or if you're getting our newsletter via email, follow through, take action, because we need your voice for these particular items and more, to be honest.
Yep. Yep. This was one of those funny moments this week that made me smack my head a bit. SMH funny, not haha funny. And this is from Nicole Cobbler, is a reporter for the Austin Statesman, highlighting in an open records request she saw that the recommended attire for Governor Abbott's official schedule as the ice storm was hitting Texas was disaster casual. And I think this might be the new nickname for our governor here, Greg Disaster Casual Abbott.
Yep, because this is how he approaches disasters, whether it's Hurricane Harvey or it's COVID-19 or it's the Texas freeze. And a lot of people may say, oh, well, you're just picking, there may be legitimate protocol for attire for people to know, what is needed or things like that. And on one side, people can understand that. But when you have it mirrored, or when you have it joined with the way the governor reacts to disasters, disaster casual is something that is much worse than just his attire. It is about the way he goes about being governor and not enforcing regulation and championing deadly deregulation, which we'll talk about later, that creates these disasters. And he's so casual about it.
Yep.
He is not motivated to fix the problems. He's more motivated to distract us so that he can continue to facilitate all of these things to benefit the corporations and the people that he wants to benefit. As we saw with Attorney General, the pay to play with our Texas leaders is very much a real thing. And so disaster casual Abbott is horrendous for all of us.
Yep. And of course, he's been lifting the mask mandate on this one disaster to distract from this other disaster that of the ice storm that we all went through a few weeks ago. And there were hearings in the Texas Ledge this week around all of this, in particular around the $16 billion overcharge that happened, which has gotten revised down. Now they're saying more like $3 billion, but still, that's a lot of money that got charged to people who were trying to stay warm in the middle of a disaster area, thanks to deadly deregulation in the first place.
Isolated on their own, 3 and 12 seem like, fairly small numbers, and going from 12 to 3 seems like a significant jump. But whenever you attach the word billion to them, it is not insignificant. This is a lot of money impacting a lot of Texas families. And this is something that can be resolved right away. That, once again, failure in leadership is the game plan for Governor Abbott, and unfortunately, too many Texas leaders.
Yeah, and I really liked this tweet from Chris Turner, who's a wonderful state rep, because it was highlighting just the way that Abbott works, right? Abbott is in charge of the Public Utility Commission. He could tell them to take care of this charge himself. Instead, what he has done has been to list fixing this overcharge as an emergency item for the Texas Legislature, which is essentially him basically throwing the ball over the fence. He could deal with it himself. Instead, he's going to make sure that the legislature deals with it so that he can avoid the political consequences. I mean, this is a man who doesn't have much courage, clearly.
Yeah, and of all the things the legislature is going to try to have to focus and fix after being a year in the pandemic, and every other thing that is going wrong in Texas that we really need solutions, he wants to insert this into their process so that it can go through this long process to get through to where then he would sign it. And we have to remember, oh yeah, Governor Abbott has to sign this come June to make this fix happen if he waits till that long. And then if we forget it and he doesn't sign it or it doesn't pass through the legislative session, then it just gets thrown under the rug. And this is where you are the governor. You can make an impact right away on this issue that devastated Texans across the state and caused, suffering across the board that was unnecessary and preventable.
Yep. Yep. And in the hearings this week, I mean, it's interesting watching what's happening in the Texas GOP right now. There seems to be a lot of jockeying for position around the 2022 gubernatorial race on the Republican side. I know Sid Miller, the ag commissioner, there's rumors he's thinking about running for governor. There's some friction right now between Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott, where this was an almost unheard of thing in exchanges this week, where the lieutenant governor showed up at the hearing and started grilling an appointee of the governor. As you were watching the kind of talking heads on Twitter about this, there was kind of a universal shock that this sort of thing just doesn't happen, but is happening this week. And this exchange really jumped out at me and speaks to some of the ways that at least certain segments of the Texas GOP think, where Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, as Scott Braddock likes to call him, Little Governor Dan Patrick, asked the puck chair, "Why didn't you let the market be the market? Just do its thing." And the puck chair responded that the market was killing people in their homes. That's why. What a moment there in the Texas Ledge this week.
Yeah, and this is that thread that we see within certain Republican leaders in Texas that have that libertarian slant that small government or even maybe no government is the ultimate goal, and the free market is what's going to help resolve and fix everything for every person in Texas or in our country. In the world is probably what they think as well. And this is a perfect example of the market won't solve everything. When it comes to basic human needs like electricity, now that we have running water, which we have Texans that still don't have clean running water because of this event, that government is important. Government has a function, and government is designed to be our voice to protect us from the companies who don't care nearly as much as they should because they value making a profit, they value their shareholders versus the millions that live in our communities in Texas. And so the market was killing people in their homes. That's why is a quote that we should not forget and we should use over and over and over when we hear some of the really craziness that we hear from Texas leaders around not having a functional government.
Yep. I mean, this is deadly deregulation in action here. Right? This is what we're talking about when we talk about deadly deregulation.
Exactly.
And of course, there's a long tradition in the Texas GOP of when the going gets tough, GOP Texas leaders go to the border to rail on immigrants, and Greg Abbott was continuing that tradition, dressed in this picture in what might be described as disaster casual, and trying to deflect from worries about COVID, worries about the power failures, to immigration, and pointing fingers at the Biden administration around this, of course, rather than taking responsibility, which he doesn't seem to be able to do for anything.
Yeah, this is exactly who Abbott is, and this is what he does do well. He dresses the part. and this is a priority for him to dress the part in whatever situation he is. And while that is fine and dandy, we need a governor who is actually willing to lead, to help every Texan, to help everybody in our state. And he uses his stage as a way of just creating the focus from one crisis to the other. Honestly, a very, very big tactic that we saw in Trump's administration and in his presidency is to continue to distract from one crisis to the other. And Governor Abbott, like you said, this is just following that tradition. Problems in Texas, let's point to the border. Let's point to immigration. And he even tried to make the leap, which has already been, what is it? People have already said that this is debunked around, any immigration processes that are bringing immigrants, trying to get asylum within Texas and being released in Texas, that they're the ones who are bringing the COVID spread. And it's maybe 100 people versus the millions of Texans that he's unleashed with his removal of the mask mandate, who do not care about trying to protect and keep everyone safe. He's emboldening those people, and trying to distract from that by pointing at the border and by pointing at immigrants.
And I just want to point out, the DPS officer standing behind Abbott's wearing a mask, and you should too.
Absolutely.
And picking up the same thread, little Governor Dan Patrick has been pointing fingers at the Biden administration around this, talking about all the money Texas has spent on immigration in the last 5 years because the federal government supposedly was falling down on the job. But most of that time, of course, was the Trump administration, and not the Biden or Obama administrations. And so this is kind of a ridiculous thing, right? Clearly just a finger pointing deflection of responsibility, which is kind of par for the course for what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, completely partisan, completely, focused on the political tricks of trying to get people concerned about something that distracts them from, them not doing their job. And Lieutenant Governor, or Little Governor Dan Patrick, as quoted by Scott Braddock here, is also a part of that game plan. And even though Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott are at odds at times, which is always interesting to see when they do it so publicly, they're very much in sync as well with how they want to, guide the state leadership, the legislation, to only function for the people that they want it to function for, and not for every Texan.
Yep. Amen. Going to pivot a little bit and just hit a few kind of smaller issues that are coming up for the Texas Ledge. If you remember a couple of the last cycle, 2018, or I guess 2019, there was the last two, I guess, cycles, there's been quite a bit of anti-trans legislation. We had the whole thing with the bathroom bills a few years back. That seems to be resurfacing this year across the country, really, but certainly in the Texas legislature, centered around girls' sports and some really invasive ways. And I was really happy to see this tweet from Sarah Davis, who's actually a Republican from the Houston area, who was saying that this is not the time for us to get back into this. This is another one of those things where it seems like anti-trans people pick the most vulnerable segments of our population to really beat up on as political pawns. And it's heartbreaking and infuriating that they do this.
Yeah, just like we highlighted with the immigration community, marginalized communities as a whole is a real tactic for legislators and state leaders to really try to beat up on, like you said, to try to bully, to try to focus resources on, because it helps distract from the things that they're not doing. It helps distract from, millions of Texans not having power during the Texas Freeze event. It distracts from the over 46,000 Texans that have died from COVID during this pandemic. It distracts from all of these major infrastructure problems and things that we need to resolve as a state. And this is why it's so unfortunate. This is why we need people to be a part of pushing back We need you to take action to push back whenever these targets, are zeroed in on, because it is making the world a much unsafer place for our marginalized communities in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is also one of those places where people can have a real powerful impact. These kinds of moves are dog whistles to particular segments of the electorate out there. And if these legislators hear from enough people saying they don't, if enough people let them know that they're being watched around this, then they don't try this stuff, right? So yeah, I would strongly encourage people to take action on these things. And in fact, we have a action right now asking people to call to ask the Texas Legislature to support banning the panic defense. There's a bill up now sponsored by Gina Enos. The committee hearing is, I think, this Monday. We have it wrong here. I think it's March 15th, not March 5th, on HB 73. The panic defense is just this idea that people who are LGBTQIA can inspire, can trigger violence in other people just by their presentation, and that that violence is a panic and that it's therefore excusable somehow, which is ridiculous, but is still allowed in Texas, unlike a lot of other states.
Yeah, we have a script for you. So click on the link. And essentially, like Jason said, it all comes down to it's time to ban the gay trans panic defense and pass this bill into law, which is HB 73. Bunch of links and resources for you there. Be a part of this action and make sure your voice is heard, and contact the people who can actually make a difference, which is the House Criminal Jurisprudence Committee.
Yep. Along the same lines, there's been this ongoing battle between Planned Parenthood and the state of Texas, where Planned Parenthood has been a provider for Medicaid funds in Texas. None of the services that they provided for Medicaid were abortion, because federal dollars are not allowed to be used to pay for abortion. These were services like breast exams and contraception, STI treatment, essential medical services that Planned Parenthood was often the only low-cost provider for people, and they've been kicked off of Medicaid. And this was upheld by a judge in Travis County this week, which is confusing to me, but that's what.
This is a question we love to ask our audience out there. Jason and I are not lawyers. We're fierce advocates to pushing for a better and brighter future in Texas. But this seems very interesting to me, the reasoning from this Travis County judge to say, well, Planned Parenthood, you're going to the federal court to fight this as well. And so I'm not going to make a judgment here at the state or at the county level within Texas, because, you already have that fight over there. To me, it feels like the judge still has an obligation, because it has been presented to him. The case has been presented regarding this injunction, that a ruling should be made. Now, I may be completely wrong. That's why we want to hear from y'all to see, as these battles, go to the different branches of government, whether it's, the legislature or the judicial branch, that we understand how we can impact what is being done in these different spaces, and ultimately have the victory that we're wanting to have, which is, let's have Planned Parenthood, be provided the resources to serve Texans, because what they're doing is helping bridge the gap of healthcare access within Texas. And so by eliminating, their ability to be able to be a part of the, Medicaid network and everything, then Texans are not getting healthcare. And how is that a good thing when we have the most uninsured people in our state is one of the most uninsured places in our country, if not the most uninsured place in the country. And And so the judge's decision in this, I'm interested to see if anybody has information around what can the judge actually do in this situation from Travis County.
Yeah, I would love to hear that myself. Um, we have an action around this also. We're really pointing to our partner Planned Parenthood's action that they're offering advocacy training on March 25th. And if you go to our website or this tweet, we've got a link to that, and you can sign up here for that and get involved with them and understand what they're pushing for and how to do it. I wanted to highlight this bill from James Tallarico, who's a wonderful state rep, former public school teacher, filed a bill this week to mandate a minimum salary of $70,000 for every teacher in Texas. And if this sounds like a lot, I mean, it really, to me, highlights how important education is for our kids, and that we just don't spend enough for teachers, right? I mean, this is a really sacred job that people have, and we should be treating it as such.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. Having teachers, having an education system, a public education system to where it's access to every Texan to be able to get an education. You know, we want the best and the brightest, and we honestly need to make this profession much more attractive and to be able to be seen as the amazing career that it is. Too often, people jump into teaching for amazing reasons, but they absolutely get crushed because of the amount of work that is needed in order to be able to educate children in Texas, but then the lack of compensation. And so, for example, to be able to afford teaching in certain areas in Texas, teachers have to move outside of where they teach so that they can actually afford, a home, afford, the things that they need, and they're having to commute so far. So by raising the minimum salary, this gives teachers an opportunity to really invest in their career and for us to invest in them so that they are long-lasting pillars in our public education system. Teachers have had to go through so much during this pandemic, have had to learn new skills on the fly, have had to interact with students in different spaces, students in the classroom some days, they're back virtual some other days, because of different things that are happening. Somebody gets a positive COVID result, and so there's quarantine that has to happen and all that kind of stuff. So huge shout out to Representative Tallarico. He continues to be the type of public servant leader we need in Texas, and is presenting solutions that would absolutely make an impact for every Texan that is trying to get educated within our state, but also for our future and the future of our economy and the future of what kind of leadership we would have in Texas. Let's invest in public education.
Yeah. And I think it's important just to put this number up against the one that we mentioned earlier about the public overcharge in utilities. Is somewhere between $3 and $16 billion, versus that a handful of private companies are making off of a disaster in Texas versus $70,000, which is kind of just regular middle class wage in Texas these days. So this is absolutely the kind of thing that we need to be doing in this state. We also wanted to highlight our partner Every Texans call for expanding Medicaid. This is, of course, something we've been pushing as well. And I was just struck by this statistic that we've had 21 rural hospital closures in Texas in the last 10 years because we haven't taken federal Medicaid dollars. We didn't expand Medicaid, and we are losing our rural hospitals because of it, which means across the state, people don't have access to health care outside of urban areas. And it's a tragedy. I mean, people are dying because of it.
And this is where it's tough for people to really get understanding of how big Texas is. We have cities like Houston or counties like Harris County that have more people than entire states throughout our country. And so the city population or county population is essentially larger than several states within our country. But at the same time, we're so big geographically. We're such a large state with so much land that we have these communities in the rural community that are miles, tens, hundreds of miles away from a lot of the infrastructure we may see in some of these major cities. And so when a hospital closed in rural Texas, it's devastating to the healthcare that needs to be provided within those communities. And too often people try to pit urban Texas against rural Texas. And it's completely unnecessary. We're all Texans, we're all humans, we all need health care, and we should be doing everything we can to make sure that every Texan has the access to a hospital, for example. So 21 hospitals since 2010. I can't even imagine the suffering that has happened for these communities. And this is why Medicaid expansion is needed, because by us not expanding Medicaid, we're limiting access, and people are unfortunately going to die from this. And this is another example of that deadly deregulation. We're not doing the things that help Texans live within our state.
Yeah. And we, of course, have an action. Sorry, I got ahead of myself here. We wanted to highlight our panel discussion that we hosted earlier this week with Melissa McChesney from Every Texan, Sophia Sepulveda from the Texas Organizing Project, Dr. Laura DeGue from Texas A&M University, and Representative John Busey. And if you go to our tweet, we have links to the recording of the Facebook Live and YouTube videos there. And check it out. We had a great discussion with them about this deadly deregulation issue right now.
So this is a lengthy conversation that happens, and we kind of segment into different sections within this conversation. So there's definitely different chunks that you can watch, and we're going to probably break out some of this conversation over the next several weeks so that people can continue to, get this information. But check out the full conversation, because the last tweet that we shared was from Every Texan. Melissa from Every Texan gave a full presentation with slides that really breaks down a lot of the things when it comes to Medicaid expansion. And then Dr. Laura Degg from Texas A&M University talked about the financial impacts of expanding Medicaid. And this is key. This is a key takeaway from that conversation, is that the Republican argument, the GOP argument, has been, well, to expand Medicaid, 90% is paid by federal government, 10% is paid by Texas. And in order for Texas to be able to afford that, it's just too big of a leap right now, and for us to be able to take on. And so what the research at Texas A&M with the Bush School of, I think, Finance, and there's another word in there I'm forgetting, what they did is they actually did the research of the implications of Medicaid expansion. And overall, Texas would be saving money on our budget. This is key. While it does require us to pay 10%, the 90% that we're bringing into our state would have so many impacts at the state level, at the county level, that we would be saving money in the end by expanding Medicaid. Our state would save money on its budget in the end by expanding Medicaid. And this completely debunks that talking point. It completely debunks what is being told to us that we can't afford it, because we are paying more right now not having Medicaid expanded. And so this is an easy decision. It is a win, 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 all the way down to 1,000 more wins, millions more wins. 1.4 million Texans would be covered with Medicaid expansion right now. And we already have thousands of children that can be covered by Medicaid that aren't. And so there's so much work that can be done within our state because we're healthcare poor in our state. And this is deadly deregulation that is truly, truly, truly costing Texans their lives by not having this implemented. So check out this conversation, share it with Texans around you, and let's make sure we are advocating for Medicaid expansion.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we have an action for that. If you check out this tweet again on our website, we're asking people to call and urge your state reps and senators and Governor Abbott and little Governor Dan Patrick to expand Medicaid.
Yeah, and it says it right there in the action: save lives, save the budget, expand Medicaid. It is really, really simple. They can try to make this complicated, but it's not. And at the end of the day, only good things happen when we expand Medicaid because of the vast amount of healthcare access that Texans would be able to have and the vast amount of resources. We're talking billions of dollars that would come into our state. And so even another angle you're looking at it, that means that's that many more healthcare workers that are being employed. That's that many more services. Those hospitals that closed, those hospitals get to stay open. And what does that do? That also helps our economy because now those people are able to have the jobs to provide this healthcare, but then the people who are able to get healthcare may be able to have much more stability in their own jobs and their own opportunities to contribute to the economy. And so this is just a no-brainer. I can't emphasize that enough. Let's expand Medicaid.
Yep. We're leaving money on the table. Last thing we want to highlight here, Harris County, which is the Houston area, of course, had a huge number of innovations in voter access during COVID last election. I mean, they were just trying all kinds of very wonderful things to make voting more accessible, having nighttime voting, drive-through voting, of course, all very secure with meeting all the security requirements that have been put in place. And the Texas GOP is pushing a set of restrictions that would just specifically target these things that Harris County did, trying to, again, keep down the voter pool and keep it from being accessible to everybody. And they've become increasingly brazen about this. They don't even really try to justify it in any terms other than it makes it harder for them to win these days. And so this is going to be a big issue that we're going to be pushing people to pay attention to and take action on.
And this kind of work is directly tied to the January 6th insurrection that happened at the Capitol that was fueled by the big lie from the Trump administration, our own Attorney General Ken Paxton, our House Elections Committee Chair Briscoe Cain, and on and on and on. They want to have this big lie because they do not ultimately want to help our democracy thrive. They want to contain it. They want to restrain it because the more they restrain and contain our democracy, then the more they get to stay in power. But we saw that with these kind of innovations, Texas went from a record of 8.9 million voters in an election cycle to 11.3 million voters. And their reaction to those innovations and seeing that kind of growth in voting was not to celebrate it, was not to try to figure out how we can replicate it, but was instead to say, how can we stop that from happening? Yeah. And when you look at the massive record of 11.3 million Texans voting in the 2020 election, it's important to understand that there were still 9.5 million Texans eligible to vote, meaning they're of age to be able to vote. Now, of those 9.5 million, 5 million were registered and could have voted in our state election for 2020, but decided not to. And so we actually have a huge amount of voting that can still happen in Texas. And it emphasizes we are a non-voting state. The reason we're a non-voting state is because we have leaders in our government and in the state legislature that want to restrain our democracy. They want to limit our democracy, and SB 7 is an example of that. And this is why we need you to once again take action, because it is our votes that are on the line and the votes of your neighbors and the votes of your community. And so we really need to push back on this.
Yeah, and you'll see this. I've heard Abbott lately talking about it in terms of this euphemistic phrase, election integrity, which sounds like, of course, we want election integrity. But really what they're doing when you look at the actual reforms is not about preserving integrity. It's about making it harder for people to vote. We all want fair elections, but there is almost zero evidence in Texas of any voter fraud, like none out of the 11 million people who voted. There haven't been any substantiated claims of this. And so why are we spending, again, taxpayer dollars and lots of news cycles on this when it's not even an issue? And I really want to challenge the media to, every time Abbott asks or talks about election integrity, ask him for substantiated evidence of any incidents of this. What are we defending against here? Because all it really seems to be is this like very shadowy insinuation of wrongdoing someplace out there, but without any specifics ever. And so we have an action about this. I don't have a tweet for it, but it's on our website, and we're going to be updating this because it's a little. It references the data in the past, but you can still call all of these or leave comments for all of these. I'm losing my words. Members of the House.
Yeah, our elections committee for the House is what this action was targeted on. And it was for their March 4th hearing, because they wanted to get the public hearing from people, which there wasn't virtual testimony available, but you could submit written comments. But now the chair, Briscoe Cain, has released his bill because bill filing ended on Friday, which is something that is really important for our state legislature, because no new bills will be filed, and now they will focus on what actually has been filed. And so this was in preparation of that, to make sure that they were hearing from Texans, but it doesn't stop there. It definitely does not stop there. And what we'll be updating in the language here is around still contacting the committee members, contacting committee chair Briscoe Cain, to let them know what your priorities are for improving voter turnout, improving voter registration, vote by mail opportunities, so that more Texans can participate in our democracy. Like we mentioned, there's still 9.5 million, and it's growing every year in terms of the number of Texans that are eligible to participate but have not. And so the way the state has disenfranchised people from voting, disenfranchised them from the process, we need to keep pushing back, and we need to really take action whenever some of these bad bills start gaining traction, to make sure that they're stopped. And so you're going to be very important out there. Every Texan is going to be very, very important in participating in these kind of actions for our elections.
Yep. So again, we encourage you to get out there and give your folks a call and let them know. That's all I got today, Alex.
Well, that is quite a bit of news, Jason. We say it in our post that the legislature is busy, active, and ready to move legislation through the process. And as I mentioned, yesterday was the closing of filing bills, which we'll see what the final count ends up landing at. But it was looking like we were going to have less bills than we've had in several legislative sessions in the past. A lot of this is due to the pandemic and just the areas of concentration and focus that are there right now. But we really need everybody to be ready, because it's about a ramp up, and it's about to get really, really busy. And even Jason and I may get a little busier and sharing news from Twitter a little bit more frequently because of how busy it's going to get. And so what you can do is check out these CTAs, these calls to action, start participating in them. Some of them you can participate in over the weekend. Leave a message, send an email. You can still have your voice heard, even though somebody's not in the office to take your phone call. And then join us every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. We're going to have a call to action event, as Jason shared. This call to action is an opportunity for you to get information, to get questions answered, just to have some community time so that you're seeing other Texans take action. And so this is a great opportunity for all of that to happen. And I'll share my screen real quick just so you see that banner or that image, what it looks like. Join the call to action with Indivisible Text Ledge every Tuesday at 1 p.m. You can register with the Zoom link that we have in our event, and we need everybody. So share with your friends, and let's have a good time doing some good work for Texas. Well, Jason, that was a whole lot. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We hope everyone enjoys the rest of their weekend, and we'll be talking to you again soon.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, everyone.